So here we are again. Today I'm drinking it's it's called what is this? RDLR, the Magician. Interesting. Oh man, I polished off this whole bottle in like 20 minutes. It's a red wine, 12.5%. Excellent, exceptional wine. Aerated it a bit. Great aroma. A little sweet. If I'm gonna be criticizing it, a little sweet for me. It's clearly a red blend, and if you sign up for that, then that's what you get, and that's what you should expect. In 20 minutes, I polished off this whole bottle except for this amount right here. And I just tried to finish this, but I'm already like my like in Rocko's Modern Life, you know, he's like saying about like it makes his bottom gurgle. the wild pig, it makes his bottom gurgle. Is that Ninnyman? That wild pig, is that actually Ninnyman? I think the animation crew reused and recycled the what do they call it when they create profiles of characters? I think they reused the Ninneman character as the wild pig character, but that's just a conspiracy theory. Who knows? Who knows really? Anyway, what I'm gonna do today. This is I think my third YouTube video. I'm gonna talk all my videos. I really do strive to keep them under 30 minutes. They might be 10 minutes, they might be 18 minutes or 26 minutes, but no matter what, I really, in my mind, I'm like, we got to keep it under 30, because one thing I really hate about some of these channels is that they just kind of ramble on and on and on, and it's like nobody has, like, there's one guy I'm subscribed to, he just posted like a 9.5 hour video, and he's just talking for 9.5 hours. I'm just thinking to myself, man, could you, like, focus? You could probably, if I was editing his videos, I could probably take that 9.5 hour video and distill it down, just like the fine tequila crafters distilled this beautiful bottle of Azuñia, which is no longer being produced. There's like a football. I'm opening it right here on camera. This is a historic moment. Some football player like bought a tequila company a few years ago, and they created this Azuñia. This one's the Reposado. It's freaking. Do I have my shot glass? Hello. Here, I'll drink it out of a skull. I've got a skull here. This is not. Can I? If I press this, will it zoom in on it? And oh, look at that! It focused in on it. Yeah, look at that. 2 skulls. Yeah. Ah, that's my skull. Underneath my skin, there's a skull. It's actually I'm trying to maneuver it just so it's the right size. I think it's actually kind of fitting because what I'm going to be talking about today is Metallica versus Megadeth. This is my much anticipated and probably historic video, wherein I talk about Metallica and Megadeth. We're already 4 minutes in, and oh, look at this. This is the reason they fail. Look, the cork is stuck in it. The top just pulled right off. Yikes. So, in a situation like this, there's only one thing you can do, and that's this. So I'm gonna pour this Reposado tequila, 100% blue agave, into this skull and drink it. By the way, I did not wash or rinse the skull, but when you think about it, this is 80 proof tequila. Well, tequila is always 80 proof. Oh, I just spilled a little. Gosh darn it. Remember that scene in Breaking Bad where, with Gustavo Fring, where he's with the Mexican cartel drug lord, and Gustav's character, he gives him the super, super, really, really nice tequila. And I always remember this moment. The Kingpin says something like, if you spill a single drop, I'll cut off your hand. Well, I just spilled a bunch. I think I just spilled a quarter shot. It's all over the place. This is terrible. Where is the... Here it is. Oh, crap. This is not going well at all because the thing, it has the... Well, that's not gonna work. Oh, shoot. Gosh darn it. What about if I take the cork from here and I cram it into this? Will that work? Not really. Oh, gosh. Oh, jeez. Well, I got another empty bottle of Azuñia. What if I take the cork off this? Will that fit? It does! Look at that! Just look at it! My skull is now full of Azuñia, and I didn't have a way to seal it properly. And look, I just found a way to seal it properly. Look at that. Just look at... I mean, sometimes you see something, and you think to yourself, man, would you just look at that? I'm looking at it. I am looking at it. I'm drinking my skull. Now, drinking my skull. Look, listen to this, too. It's perfect. Do you hear that? That is the sound of a perfect seal. You know, there's a subreddit for that. It's called Perfect Fit. .reddit.com, and this is an example of perfect fit. Little bit of made in China off taste, but overall, you know, perhaps I could have rinsed it out with a little soapy water, but I'm feeling good about it. They say that you know, high proof alcohol is sort of like an antiseptic. Is that what they call it? Antimicrobial. So, microbial. I just said microbial. Antimicrobial surface is created. And by the way, check out my shirt. It says Control Freak. So if you can see down at the bottom, it says Control Freak. So if you're like me, then you'll be able to not only identify the 12 controllers and their systems that they accompany, but you'll also say, well, where's the PS? You'll be like, well, how come you didn't? Because I didn't design the shirt. I bought the shirt 5 years ago, and I didn't design it. It is what it is. I think it's a cool, clever concept, so leave me alone. It's not a freaking, it's like a merit badge thing. Like, you know, Boy Scouts have like that sash, which has all their merit badges on it. Like, there's 12 controllers on the shirt. Just leave it alone and say, you know, there's enough there to be a fun icebreaker. Speaking of fun icebreakers, I think I'm going to go down to the bar. I'm going to Uber there, obviously, because I'm clearly pissed drunk, but already, and it's barely 6 p.m., but I think I'm going to drink myself to death today. Like, why not? Why not drink yourself to death? Who cares once you're dead? You're dead. It's really nothing more that matters. Nothing else matters and this is my transition, this is my segue. Nothing Else Matters is a great song by Metallica from the Black Album. And today, the topic of my video, I know we're almost 10 minutes in, but I don't have that much to say about this discussion. So I just wanted to just sort of, can I say this? Can I dick around for a little while? Like, I just wanted to mess with you guys. If you're watching the video, the topic is Metallica versus Megadeth. Now, I have to say, I'm extremely biased towards Megadeth. So it's really not fair. It's for like with Star Wars and Star Trek, my last video, there's pros and cons, but I'm extremely biased towards Megadeth. It's not helped by the fact that there was that whole Napster thing. I was coming up in the late 90s, and the Napster thing was a big ordeal. Metallica trying to be like, you're taking our money, you're putting our music out there on the internet and nobody's paying for it, we want you to buy our CDs. And it really just came down to money. And I'm not saying that Mustaine's not the same way. I mean, maybe he just didn't have enough money to make a big legal claim. But here's what, before I get off track too far, speaking of getting off track, the train of consequences. There's a train of consequences here. Before I get too far off topic, let's talk about Metallica and Megadeth in terms of just what I know about them. Because I like to give my credentials about midway through my videos, and right now my credentials extend only so far. I haven't listened to any Megadeth album since around 2010, and I haven't listened to any Metallica albums that have come out since, well, I mean, I guess since the Black Album, really. So, I mean, that's Saint Anger, never heard it. And, it's probably a good thing because I have very strong opinions about both bands and have a extremely high degree of respect for them both for different reasons. But I haven't heard anything from Metallica since Black Album. I haven't heard anything from Megadeth since The World Needs a Hero. I haven't heard 13. I haven't heard apparently there's some great Megadeth album that came out recently called like D something, like Destructured or Dematerialized. I don't know what the hell it's called. By the way, I love drinking this extremely high grade tequila out of a skull bottle. Is so neat to me. So I'm having a lot of fun. So cheers. Let's toast. Hold on, let me zoom in on it, right? Toast. A toast. Metallica's first album was released in the early 80s, and it was called Kill 'Em All. Mustaine contributed to the album in a small way, but they'd been making music for years, and Mustaine was a big problem. Dave Mustaine was, he was addicted to heroin, or he was a drunk or something like that. So they kicked him out of the band, and Mustaine was like, well, screw you guys. And by the way, I'm extremely profane day-to-day life, but I'm trying to make my video fun for all ages, including the 12-year-olds who I really hope discover these bands, particularly Megadeth, just as I did when I was 12. The third CD that I ever bought, and I bought them all at the same time, but it was the third one that I selected with my warehouse gift card, $50 warehouse gift card that was given to me by a family member. The third CD that I selected was Megadeth's Euthanasia. Still to this day, one of my favorite albums, not just because it's the third one I ever bought, but because it's really great on its own merits. It's terrific. It's probably the best Megadeth album of all. And again, my bias is clearly showing. It was the third album I ever bought, so it means a lot to me for that reason, but I'm trying not to give it a higher grade simply because of that fact. Megadeth's Rust in Peace, for example, is obviously the more iconic album. Euthanasia is considered by many to be a flawed record, and if I'm being honest, it has some major weak points. Most notably, the second half is not nearly as good, and also the drumming, in my opinion, is some of the weakest drumming on any Megadeth record that's ever come out. So, on the other hand, Metallica's Kill 'Em All is a classic. It is absolutely iconic, as is their follow-up. My personal favorite of all of their records, Ride the Lightning, is a perfect album. Ride the Lightning is totally untouchable. Everything about it comes together flawlessly. After that, they have Master of Puppets, which I also love. Little stronger first half than second half, I should say. Then I believe Cliff Burton died. A freaking tour bus crashed, and then as he was like scrambling for safety, it like rolled on top of him. So that's horrifying. And after that, everything started to fall apart. The problem with And Justice for All is, first of all, And Justice for All has the best songs of any Metallica album, bar none. Incredible music, incredible songwriting, not incredible music. The production is flawed. The drumming is weak. The bass is just atrocious. But there have been people that if you go on YouTube, there's been people who have remastered, as they say, remastered the album. And actually, if you're able to get a really high quality remastering of And Justice for All, you'll realize it's their best album. As it stands, the way that the CD got pressed, it leaves a lot to be desired. Unfortunately, I don't know how that kind of stuff can happen. You know, albums are made or broken based on the production aspect, and that's one that, you know, had every shot at being a bona fide classic, yet it got screwed up in the later stages of the creation. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that doesn't really happen nowadays, but everything's changed nowadays with the brick walling of sound and the dynamic range issues and the Rick Rubinizing of things. And, you know, that I'll make another video talking about that, because that's a worthy discussion to have, as well as is really just the difference between CD and vinyl, the difference between music that was recorded and processed, edited, mastered 20 years ago versus today, or even, honestly, at this point, 20 years ago versus 20 years before that, because over a 40 to 50 year period, you can definitely see that when you analyze music on these, no pun intended, levels, you can see that there was sort of a conflict happening with the emergence of compact disc technology, creating a dynamic range possibility that, you know, the old school techs who were mastering and had essentially perfected the sound of vinyl were suddenly, you know, for lack of a better term, out of a job because CDs completely switched the game up. Well, Megadeth and Metallica both got to sort of exist within this golden era, which is the mid to late 80s. That's when they probably produced some of their best work. Metallica dominated the 80s with their exceptional albums, but are sort of justifiably forgotten. Not forgotten, that's definitely the wrong word to use, but justifiably, like, when you look at their discography, if you're a big fan of Metallica, then good for you, but their discography, for all intents and purposes, sort of forgotten after about 1992 or whatever, whenever the Black Album came out. After that, it was like, load, reload, nothing, Saint Anger, gross, pathetic, you know, excuse for an album. Some people love it, but, you know, I've never even heard it, to be honest, so I'd love to do a reaction video. I just heard people talking about how, like, Rick Rubin, like, butchered their sound, and I was like, you know what, I got better things to do with my life. Megadeth, on the other hand, started just absolutely destroying in the late 80s and kept it up for probably a lot longer. I followed Megadeth's career well into the 90s and deep into the 2000s, even, you know, World Needs a Hero and just all of their stuff. Dave Mustaine. Metallica is obviously a band. Megadeth is more just like Dave Mustaine and whoever he chooses to work with. Ellefson. I know a lot of the I know a lot of the people that Mustaine's worked with, but he's sort of a one-man show in the sense where he's really creatively in control of the whole thing. And Metallica, on the other hand, is sort of the greater than the sum of their parts, I think you would say. Like they all, it's a bunch of very fine, talented musicians coming together. And 18 minutes, okay, so I'm good. Coming together to talk about, I'm coming here to talk to you about Metallica. They're just, as individuals, there's something to focus on, because whether it's Lars Ulrich's drumming or Cliff Burton's bass, rest in peace, Metallica is just, you know, obviously Hetfield, his vocals, his delivery, his timing, his songwriting, they're just so great. Those first four albums are like, it's like Pink Floyd's, it's like Pink Floyd metal, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals. Like 4 albums you could just play in a row and it would be like mind-blowing. Megadeth, on the other hand, is sort of hit or miss. Each album has high points and low points. And it's sort of like a roller coaster ride because the high points are so high, but the low points are so low. And on the other hand, oh man, I just tried to cork this, but I pressed it right into my kidney, and now my kidney hurts. Jesus. Let me put that down for a second. On the other hand, the total number, and here's where I stand, because I love being able to put a record on from start to finish. That to me is glory, which coincidentally is the title of a song on a Megadeth record that I'm going to talk about in a moment. Also, it's the name of a Sugar Ray track on 1459, which is another record that I'll talk about another time. But I like to be able to put because every time I listen to a really classic record, I think like this is what they wanted. They wanted you to sit down and listen to it for 35 or 45 or 50 minutes or perhaps even an hour or even longer than that in the case of Tool, but that's a whole other video. I like to be able to press play and just listen to the album just all the way through, and not because I necessarily appreciate every single song the same way, but because I appreciate the fact that the musicians all collectively decided that was the way it needs to be heard. This is the introduction, and here's a track, and then if you know anything about how vinyls are released, there's usually a ballad right before the disc has to get flipped over the record. So there's just a whole thing with an album, playing it from start to finish, that means a lot to me. It matters tremendously when a artist decides to put out an album and a listener decides to listen to it. I think that's sort of an interaction that is kind of lost on the youth of today, where they're just like, wow, I want to hear this song and I'm going to make this playlist. And I like albums where you can't really break them up. When it comes to that, Metallica is just untouchable. You can't not stop listening to, if you just press play. Like, for example, let's take a classic like Master of Puppets, one of the most iconic thrash speed metal albums of the 80s. Like, like already you're just like it's just layering, and it's like classical guitars, like what was going through these guys' minds? And then obviously it just builds with the drums. It's like so great to just be able to put on a record like Master Puppets and just from start to finish, it's 8 tracks. If you listen to it on vinyl, you can flip the vinyl over and listen to the whole album, and on a single vinyl, which is just so amazing. Kids today, even adults, honestly, 18 to 22-year-olds, let's say, don't understand what it's like to put a record onto a record player. Because, see, the thing is, I grew up in the CD era. I was born in 87, so CDs were already in full swing, but my father, had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vinyls and a record player, and I could listen to vinyls whenever I wanted when I was too young to be able to just go out and buy music. And Napster and the internet and stuff like that, I didn't really grow up in that kind of reality. Like, Napster was cutting edge, and my internet was, at the time that the whole Napster Metallica feud was happening, I was not capable of downloading anything quickly. It took me, I remember playing The Sims and trying to download some expansion pack accessories, I remember the hot tub took me it was 2 megabyte file, and it took me almost a couple hours. It was an hour and 46 minutes to download the freaking hot tub accessory expansion thing for the Sims. So you have to understand where I'm coming from. I lived in a weird transitional time where the internet wasn't quite ready to become the modern, 2.0 version that it is today, or even maybe some would say 3.0. There was no, like, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, if you had a flip phone, you were a millionaire. Like, that's the world that I grew up in. And so, I had records and vinyls, and I would play them. I would play Black Sabbath. My dad had Paranoid and their self-titled, obviously, and Black Sabbath 4. And what's the other one? What's the one with War Pigs on it? Is that Paranoid? No. There's another album that came out. It's like the third album. Oh, Master of Reality. Actually, now that I think about it, Master of Reality is one of the, probably the greatest of the four. So I'm surprised it didn't pop into my mind immediately. But anyway, what I'm saying is, we had it was different. It was different. And when I was growing up, there was really a strong emphasis on an album, because you couldn't just like scan and composite music. If you were gonna make a mixtape, let's say, and my girlfriend that I dated in high school, I made a mixtape on a freaking tape cassette. I made her a mixtape, and I remember writing all the different names of all the songs on the Maxell cassette tape, and then handing it to her, and I was like, I don't even know if she had a tape player, because it was a weird time. Does she even have a tape player? Like, some cars have tape decks, and, maybe you have like an Iowa surround, no, I don't want to even say surround sound, like an Iowa 2.1, two speakers and a subwoofer, let's say, perhaps, or maybe the subwoofer is built into the two speakers, and it's like you don't even have a subwoofer that's dedicated, you just have a left and a right channel, sound system. Like, it was just a weird time. I'm telling you, that the mid to late 90s into the early 2000s was a different time, and I know that sounds kind of, you could easily mock me for making such an obvious assessment, but the reality is, a lot of people don't fully understand how important a good, consistent, solid album was, and that brings me full circle to my point that Metallica has always and will always have the more classic, iconic, solid albums from start to finish. And I know I'm getting close to 30 minutes. I only have 2 minutes left. I always try to keep my videos under half an hour. Megadeth is still the better band. They're by far the better band. Dave Mustaine has more talent than everybody in Megadeth combined. If you don't believe me, start with Rust in Peace, and then Countdown to Extinction. Just logically follow it up until Euthanasia, and realize that when Megadeth was sort of finding their footing, Peace Sells But Who's Buying, let's say, or So Far So Good So What, they were still at the highest points in their albums clowning Metallica. The highest highs of Megadeth's worst album, clown the highest highs on Metallica's, like Megadeth, I always use the expression firing on all cylinders, absolutely demolishes Metallica. Metallica has a more consistent sound that carries you along through a listening experience. But if you, let's say you're in this new modern generation, these kids nowadays, and you want to put together a playlist, there is no playlist there is no playlist, in my opinion, from Metallica that could even touch the kind of playlist from Megadeth that I would make. And I say that having not listened to anything that they've put out, Megadeth I'm talking about, since Risk, I guess. I think Risk was where they kind of lost me. I stopped listening after Risk. Even Risk has some highlights on it that would absolutely destroy, obliterate whatever it was that Metallica was putting out in the late 90s. And I'm not talking, I'll get into this in more detail if you want to ask me questions, my opinions on some of the songs and tracks that to me sort of define the playlist of my life. There's tracks on Risk that destroy, and I'm not talking about crush 'em, I'm not talking about whatever the blah 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 part 1 or 2, like the way that they end the album, even though that's good. But I'm talking about tracks that I personally identify with and hold in very high regard. Whereas Metallica sort of, in my opinion, really couldn't keep it up after the Black Album. They kind of lost their footing. And if you want to prove me wrong, again, like I always say, I'm open-minded. I want to hear discussion and debate, pros and cons, ups. What's way up there and what's way down there, and where can we meet in the middle? Because this Metallica versus Megadeth discussion is personal, not just to me, but to a lot of people. And I think it's good to have a strong opinion, and I also think it's good to disagree with people. It helps one to build sort of their own, like, build upon their past and look to their own future when they hold a strong opinion about something today. But it doesn't mean that you in the distant future is going to be like who you are right now. And just like it doesn't mean, just like you who you are right now is not like you from the past. It's a growth. It's a progression of your identity. And if somebody comes up to me and says, Megadeth sucks, Metallica's so much better, then I'm like, okay, that's cool. I personally completely disagree. I think the opposite, but I would very much be interested in hearing your arguments either way. And I'm like that with a lot of things. I'm like that with and just because this video is centered around, music, I'm like that about Pink Floyd. I'm like, the Beatles, or I don't have opinions on Zeppelin because I don't follow them, but Zeppelin's one of the big three, like, bands that from the 70s, 80s that people usually have very strong opinions about. Or you want to get more modern, maybe we could talk about Eminem, let's say, or some of these other groups that honestly some of them I don't follow. I'm kind of getting into Fuel right now. Hemorrhage in My Hands. I'm listening to their albums and following their story from like 20 plus years ago, and I'm like, they're kind of like a toss. It's like a combination of Puddle of Mud, which is another album or band that I don't really know much about. But I'm just listening to like this new Fuel, not new, but I'm listening to a Fuel album which I've never heard before called Something Like Human, and I'm listening to it. And I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of like it's like Lane Staley's band, Alice in Chains. I like how I refer to Alice in Chains as Lane Staley's band. It's like them meets Puddle of Mud. Like, it's like the worst aspects of both bands come together to make this Fuel album happen. I'm like, this is like a 6 out of 10, but it's definitely very, very high on my guilty pleasure scale. And but when I start thinking about bands, thinking about bands like, bands like Metallica, bands like Megadeth, obviously I have much stronger opinions. But what I'm saying is, perhaps there's a case to be made for no matter what you like or listen to or appreciate or understand or are passionate about. If I strongly disagree with you, that's not me making anything personal. I'm not attacking your character or your intelligence. I'm saying I disagree. And if you really feel strongly about that kind of mindset that you're in, that you have, well then by all means, let's debate, let's discuss, let's open each other's minds and explore, because there's so much to be gained from rational discussion, fact-based discussion, based on evidence, based on history, based on performance, and everything else that goes along with an understanding of music. I'll give my credentials some other time, but this video's already gone too long, so I gotta cut it short. Let's get into it. Let's have fun. Let's be friends. And let's think about each other's thoughts and see what comes next.